Shabbos Daf Pei Beis. It takes us to the end of the 8th parak of the Masechta Motzi Ayin and begins the 9th parak, which is called Amar Rabbi Akiva. Now, just before the end of the parak, we have a Mishnah. From the beginning of the Daf until the Mishnah, we are continuing our discussions about the proper manner of relieving oneself of solid waste and cleaning the area. So the Gemara will have three topics which we will discuss. First of all, how to be seated correctly so as not to injure oneself. Then we'll have a discussion of which material is preferable to use on Shabbos for cleaning, as far as halacha. Then the Gemara will discuss what happens to somebody who does not relieve himself when he needs to, somebody who holds himself back, and then the reverse, how one can relieve matters of constipation. This takes us to the Mishnah. The Mishnah then discusses that's enough with elimination issues. The Mishnah then discusses the minimum size of pottery that's useful. That's going to take us to the end of the chapter. And then we'll begin the next parak, which starts with a discussion completely unrelated to Chos Shabbos, which is about Avodah Zarah making you tamei if you carry it, but we'll preview that when we get there. So first of all, the Gemara, in the middle of the discussion about relieving oneself of solid wastes, has a bit of an incident in which it describes that it's important not to strain oneself in order to cause an injury, in order to avoid causing an injury. So first of all, the Gemara says that Rav Huna said to his son, Rabbi, how come you don't go to learn by Rav Chisda? He says very good and important things. So Rabbi said to his father, what do you mean? Every time I go to him, he starts discussing worldly things. He doesn't talk to me about halacha. For example, the last time I went, he said that somebody who sits down in the bathroom shouldn't sit down hard. He should sit down gently, because otherwise he'll strain the muscles near the rectum and cause himself an injury. And then when he's actually trying to relieve himself, he shouldn't strain himself overly for the same reason. The muscles will become detached. So Rav Huna said, what do you mean? That's what he's telling you. That's even more important. That's things which affect people's lives. If that's what he's telling you, for sure you should go. Okay, the Gemara's next subject is what material to use for cleaning the area after relieving oneself on Shabbos. So we have two machloksin when somebody has a choice between two materials. First of all, what happens if he has a rock or a piece of pottery? So some machlokes Rav Huna and Rav Chisda, whether the rock is preferable because it won't injure you, while the pottery could be sharp, or the pottery is preferable because it's not muksa and the rock is muksa. So the Gemara says we have a brayso which explicitly says that if somebody has a rock and a piece of pottery, he should use the pottery. Obviously, it's more important that it's not muksa. We're not afraid of an injury. So the Gemara says, no, that's different. There he's talking about a piece of pottery that's not sharp. It's from the handle. So you don't need to worry about an injury. But a rock is still preferable to a sharp thing which could cause a wound. Next, what if he has a stone or grass? So this is a machlokes between Rav Chisda and Rav Hamnuna, which one to use. The issue with the grass, Rashi has a few different possible pshatim. He prefers the one where the grass is growing, and the concern is that maybe when he's using it, while it's still attached to the ground, he may tear it out of the ground. Okay, now the Gemara asks on this, how could you say that he could use the grass? We have a brayso that says you're not allowed to use something flammable. So the Gemara says, no, this is fresh, moist grass, it's not considered flammable. Okay, next, the Gemara says, what happens to somebody who doesn't relieve himself when he should? He holds himself back. So the Gemara says, the machlokes is what happens to him. Everybody agrees that he will start to smell bad. The question is from where? One says it's Rav Chisda and Ravina. One says that he'll have bad breath, and one says that he'll have bad body odor. Gemara brings a brayso which we've seen earlier in Daf Mem Aleph, that somebody who holds himself in from relieving himself, well, he's like an oven where you didn't clear out the old ashes when you started to burn new wood in it, and it's the beginning of body odor. Okay, now what should one do if he has constipation? So Rav Chisda says you should stand up and sit down and stand up and sit down a few times. Rav Chanan from Narada said you shouldn't only do that, you should also walk from place to place. The walking will also help. Ibn Luna said he should massage the rectal area with a rock. And the Rabbanan said he should stop thinking about it. The Gemara says, stop thinking about it, isn't that going to help? The Gemara says, no, you should stop thinking about everything else. And you should focus exclusively on that. Now, the Gemara supports Rav Chizda. Rabbi Yirmiyah from Difti said, I once saw an Arab who stood up and sat down, and stood up and sat down, and it came pouring out of him like pouring water out of a pot. Pouring things out of a pot. He didn't say water. And now the Gemara has a brisa. What should somebody do if he wants to evacuate the bowels completely because he needs to be in a formal event and he doesn't want to have to leave in the middle to go to the bathroom? So he should walk 40 amos. The question is how? According to the first opinion, he should walk 10 walks of 4 amos each. According to the second opinion, he should walk 4 walks of 10 amos each. But if he does that, he'll be relieved. Okay, this is the end of the discussion about relieving oneself. And now the Mishnah, we begin. It goes back to detailing the minimum size of various different objects, which is significant, which is useful and therefore significant that one would be obligated to bring a chatas if he carries it on Shabbos. And this Mishnah will be discussing a piece of cheres, a piece of pottery. So Gemara has 3 opinions. What is the smallest amount of cheres which is useful? So we have Rabbi Yehuda who says that if you're stacking up boards or beams, you want them to lay flat upon each other. So if there's a space between them, you fill it in with shards of cheres. That's apparently the smallest size that there could be that's useful. Now, slightly larger than that size is Rabbi Meir, who says it's enough to pick up or to move around a coal, a burning coal. And Rabbi Yossi says it has to be enough to hold a revius of water. Okay, now the Mishnah starts bringing proofs. So Rabbi Meir says there's a proof to me. In Yeshaya, the Navi curses, the Navi is upset with Klal Yisrael for trusting Mitzrayim. And he says that their wall of protection will smash. And he says there's not even going to be anything left, not even big enough. The wall of cheres, of earthenware, will smash, and there's not even going to be a piece big enough to pick up a coal from a fire. So Gemara says, there you see that's the smallest possible size that there could be. So the Gemara, that was Rabbi Meir's proof to his opinion. Rabbi Yossi says, no. Look at the next words. Right after that, it says to pick up a coal from a fire or to scoop up water from a well. So you see that water is also a significant size. Enough to scoop up water is also a significant size. So it's not a proof to you. It's a proof to you and to me. It is a proof against Rabbi Yehuda, but between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Meir, we don't have a proof. Okay. Now the Gemara begins. The Gemara, first of all, says, I don't understand. What's bigger, scooping up water or scooping up fire? From the language of the Mishnah, it seems to be that scooping up water is larger. A revius sounds like it's a larger amount than what you need to hold a coal. But the Psukim said that there isn't going to be enough to hold a coal, or even enough to hold water. That sounds like the water is a smaller size. You don't first say the smaller amount won't be, and then say the bigger amount isn't going to be. So Gemara says it's talking about a coal, where you want to hold a coal from a big fire, and you got to stay far away so that you don't burn your hands. So you need a big piece. That's bigger than the amount you need to hold a revius of water. Okay, now the Gemara says Rabbi Yossi had answered Rabbi Meir. He said, you can't bring me a proof from the fact that it says not to hold a coal. There won't be a piece big enough to hold a coal, because the next words are that it won't even be enough to hold water. So the Gemara says that's a good answer. What did Rabbi Meir think? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir said that just because there won't be a piece big enough to hold water, doesn't mean that's a significant size. The Navi was saying there won't be any valuable size. That's me. That's what I said. That's to hold a fire. And there won't even be any useless size. That's what you said, which is to hold water. Okay, this is the end of Perek HaMotzi Yain, and now we begin in Perek Amar Rabbi Akiva. Now, this chapter is mostly not discussing Hilchos Shabbos at all. It begins with 7 halachos. Only one of them has to do with Hilchos Shabbos. That's about a bris milah on Shabbos. But the other ones have nothing to do with it. The reason that this is all quoted here is because they all start with the word minayin. How do we know a certain halacha? So first of all, the Mishnah discusses One simple halacha, Rabbi Akiva says, how do you know that if you carry an avodah zarah, it makes you tamei? If you didn't even touch the avodah zarah, but you carried it, it makes you tamei. So Rabbi Akiva says it's like a nida. If you carry a nida, you become tamei even if you didn't touch her. And there's a connection between avodah zarah and nida. You see that from the psukim, which discusses avodah zarah, and it says as follows. It says that in the future, Klal Yisrael will destroy their avodah zarahs and tizreim k'may dava tzei toimra. You'll throw it out like a nida. You'll say, "Get out." Okay, so there you see that avodah zarah is compared to nida, and it's because of this halacha that you become tamei if you carry either. The Gemara now begins by quoting a Mishnah, which shows that this statement of Rabbi Akiva is not agreed to by the Chachamim. They hold that the Tumah of avodah zarah works differently. And then the Gemara will have a Machlokas Amoraim to explain that Machlokas Tanoim, what the exact issue of their Machlokas is. So first of all, the Mishnah is discussing somebody whose house shares a wall with an avodah zarah. Some discussion amongst Rishonim whether the building that his house shares a wall with itself is worshipped, or it is a church of sorts for some other avodah zarah which is worshipped. But either way, the case is that adjoining wall, which is shared by both buildings, falls down. So the person whose house it was is not allowed to rebuild the wall, because then he will be benefiting that avodah zarah. So what he has to do is withdraw 4 amos from the property line and rebuild a wall there, and fill in the space with something unusable like a bathroom or plant thorns, so that it will not benefit the avodah zarah. It will not help it either by building the wall, and it won't help it by giving it more space. Now, how far does he have to withdraw? Where do you measure the 4 amos from? So if the wall was in his ground, then from the edge of the wall that is on the other side, the far edge of the wall. If the wall was built over the line, then from the center of the wall, that's where he has to start measuring the 4 amos. Now, that's not relevant to us too much. What the following halacha is: what is the halacha of all the pieces of the wall? The bricks, the cement, the wood, what do you do with all that? So here's the Machlokas Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. Rabbi Akiva says it is tamei like a nida. You're not that even if you carry it without touching it, it's metamei you. The Chachamim say no, it's tamei like a sheretz. A sheretz is a rodent, one of the 8 rodents, which is metamei if it is a carcass. And their halacha comes from the fact that it says shakitz teshaktzenu. It calls avodah zarah shakitz teshaktzenu. Shkatzim is the term that's used to refer to the rodents. So that's why those two are linked. It has the same halacha. Rabbi Akiva's link is, like we said in our Mishnah, from the phrase tizreim k'may dava, which compares avodah zarah to nida. Okay, now we're going to have, first of all, a statement of Rabbah to explain the psukim here. What is tizreim k'may dava, what is that about? So he says tizreim means make it like a zar. Tizreim, make it zar, make it a stranger. Say toimar lai, say to it, get out of here, and don't say to it, come, you are welcome here. Okay, now we're going to begin a machlokas between Rabbah and Rabbi Eliezer to explain what is the case exactly, what is the exact halacha that Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim are arguing about. Okay, so again, Rabbi Akiva said that it's tamei like a nida, and the Chachamim said it's tamei like a sheretz. There are actually 3 levels of tumah, and that's why we're going to have confusion. Well, not confusion, we're going to have dispute as to which level of tumah they're actually arguing about. The 3 levels of tumah are as follows. Level 1 is where you touch the tamei object. That is metamei everything. That applies to a sheretz, that applies to a nevela, and that applies to a nida. Level 2 is where you're carrying it without touching it, but you are directly resting your weight, or it's resting its weight upon you. That applies to a nevela and to a nida, but not to a sheretz. And then the third and most sublime level of tumah, the most hard to achieve, is if one is actually not even resting his weight or carrying the weight of this object, but it is suspended above him, or he's suspended above it on supports. That tumah applies to a nida. That tumah does not apply to a nevela. These are the 3 levels. So it's clear to everybody that avodah zarah definitely has tumas sheretz. That's clear. The question is, what is the case of the machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim? Is it about the middle level, where we're carrying it, or is it about the lowest level, where it is just being suspended above you, but you're not actually carrying it? So this is the machlokas. Rabbah says that it's in the 3rd level. The 2nd level, where you're actually carrying it and supporting its weight, that Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim both agree is metamei you as an avodah zarah. The machlokes is about the third level. Rabbi Kiva says that avodah zarah is compared to nida, and therefore it has the halacha just like a nida, and all three levels are matame just like a nida. The chachamim say no. I accept your comparison to nida. I accept your pasuk that compares avodah zarah to nida, but I also have a pasuk that compares it to sheretz. Now sheretz has only level 1 tumah. Nida has all three levels of tumah. And therefore, what you're going to learn to avodah zarah is that it has a compromise. It has the middle level of tumah, level 2, meaning that it's matame you if you touch it, it's matame you if you carry it, but only if you're actually supporting its weight. Now, that's the opinion of Rabbah. However, Rabbi Elazar disagrees, and he says no. The machlokes is about the middle case. Everybody agrees that the third level of tumah, which applies to a nida, that does not apply to avodah zarah. The machlokes is about the middle case, where you're actually supporting the weight. That's the machlokes. The Rabbanan say, no, I do not compare avodah zarah to nida at all. I only compare it to a sheretz. It has the same halacha as the sheretz, and you do not become tamei from avodah zarah just by carrying it. Rabbi Kiva, however, says the exact same thing that we had said is the opinion of the Rabbanan according to Rabbah. Rabbi Akiva says, no, I do compare it to sheretz, and I do compare it to nida, and therefore its halacha is the compromise, and it has the first two levels of tumah, level 1 and level 2, and it does not have level 3 because of the comparison to sheretz. Okay, now the Gemara is going to go through a number of questions. They will apply, the ones on the Rabbanan in Rabbah's opinion will also apply to Rabbi Akiva in Rabbi Eliezer's opinion, because that's the same opinion. It's just a question of who holds it. So first of all, the Gemara says, according to Rabbah. According to Rabbah, Rabbi Akiva learns that the halachas of an avodah zarah is exactly like the halacha of a nida. Then what is he going to do with the pasuk which compares it to a sheretz? It says to shaktzenu. So Gemara says for a different halacha entirely. That's to tell you that things which serve the avodah zarah, not the avodah zarah itself, but objects used to serve it, that has tumah like a sheretz. You only are matame it if you touch it itself. Now the Gemara says, according to the Chachamim, you told me that I got the halacha that it has a middle level tumah from the fact that it is linked to a sheretz which has only level 1, a nida which has all three levels. So the compromise is that it has the second level. It has the first two levels. The Gemara says, why don't you just compare it to nevela? That would have been much simpler. That's what the halacha of nevela has. Let the pasuk link it to that. So Gemara says, no. If we would do that, we would miss a halacha, and that is the following halacha. A nida's limbs that are cut off do not have tumas nida. So we want to tell you that pieces of an avodah zarah that broke off are like limbs that broke off, and they don't have tumas avodah zarah. That's another halacha. That's why we use a comparison to nida and not just to nevela. It would have been simpler, but like this we get an extra halacha about the limbs that fall off. So Gemara says, well, you can't say that, because on Daf Pei Gimel, tomorrow we're going to have where Rav Chama Bar Goya asks, what is the halacha about pieces that fall off and avodah zarah? According to you, the Rabbanan just said clearly what the halacha is. Someone says, you're right, he was only asking according to Rabbi Akiva. He knew what the Chachamim held. Chachamim clearly held that it's not tamei, and that's why they learned out of nida, but he wasn't sure. He was asking in Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Okay, now the Gemara goes to Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says that Rabbi Akiva actually holds like what we said before. Rabbah says the Chachamim hold. Rabbi Elazar holds that Rabbi Akiva says that avodah zarah has level 1 tumah contact and level 2 tumah carrying, but not level 3 where it's only suspended. So Gemara asks, what is the purpose of comparing it to a sheretz? So the Gemara says, again, that's for the halacha of the items used to serve the avodah zarah, that those are tamei like a sheretz. We want to know, according to the Chachamim, what's the function of the comparison to a nida? It doesn't have any halachas of a nida. It just only matame like a sheretz. The Gemara gives the same answer, that to teach about the severed limbs. That just like that doesn't apply to a nida, it doesn't apply to an avodah zarah. Then the Gemara says, now according to Rabbi Akiva, why did you compare it to a sheretz and to a nevela and come up with to a sheretz and to a nida and come up with a compromise halacha? Just compare it straight to nevela, which is the exact same halacha. The Gemara says, you're right, but I wanted to teach, I could have, but now like this, I get the extra halacha about the pieces that fell off, like the severed limbs of a nida. So Gemara says, hold on a second. Now, Rav Chama Bar Goya is really up the creek, because you just said that both Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim learned this halacha of the severed limbs. So what was Rav Chama Bar Goya asking? He's not, according to this approach, he's not asking anything according to anybody. The answer is clear according to Rabbi Akiva and the Chachamim. So when it says Rabbi Bar Yoga obviously did not hold like Rabbi Eliezer, he held like Rabbah, and he was asking according to Rabbi Akiva's opinion the way it's understood by Rabbah.